You have to realize who you are right now, and staying that way is absolutely unacceptable. Why would you settle for any part of yourself that you are unsatisfied with, especially if it is not conducive towards a better life? You can decide at any moment to completely and deeply reinvent yourself. You can choose right now to be better than you ever were before. I once heard something that really resonated with me. It's okay to be a loser, but it is absolutely not okay to stay one. And so I decided not to be a loser at all, because to me, the definition of a loser is being someone who has stopped looking for ways to improve immensely, has stopped looking for ways to succeed greatly, and as a result, doesn't even realize the true value of failure. Now, with all of that being said, I have chosen to completely evolve within the next year. I have chosen to become those better versions of myself, and I have chosen to completely embrace failure, because that is the only reason why I will continue to level up. And so I wanted to share the practical strategies, the reframe mindsets I have been and will be using to accomplish this, in hopes of inspiring you to pursue your own drastic level up. First things first. Notice that I said drastic level up. We are not simply looking to improve by 1% per day, which is definitely though where you're likely to start. We are looking to build by 3%, by 7%, by 10%, and so forth and so on as time progresses. And the best way to do this, the most effective way to do this, is to become extremely intentional. You need to become strategic about every step that you take forward. The first step is going to be choosing and identifying who you want to become. That's going to come with gathering and deciphering specific information about yourself. This is where journaling or note-taking or some form of it becomes extremely helpful, because this is how you're going to keep track of yourself. A great place to start gathering information about yourself is every time you look in the mirror and see your flaws. This is something that I used to do all the fucking time. And as you probably already know, those flaws that you see in the mirror are the basic particular traits that you already know you have to upgrade. So this is where our first mindset shift has to happen. You will now look at your flaws not as flaws, but as stats. You will look at yourself as a video game character, and as most video game characters do, they have stats that they can increase over time, meaning that your flaws aren't faults. They are simply just traits that you haven't built up yet. You have no reason to feel bad or to pity yourself, because you realize that you have the capability to increase your stats in those areas, and you have chosen to do so. Another way to quickly identify stats that you might like to increase is to look to your peers and inspirations. When you break it down, more often than not, it's not that you want to become like them. It's that they have certain traits that you would like to have yourself. So take the time to study your heroes and isolate those traits from them in every aspect. For example, as you might have seen on this channel recently, I very much look up to Alex Hormozi, particularly his intelligence and his ability to articulate his thoughts. So a stat that I would like to increase is my ability to be well spoken. If you've taken the time to do this, you should have a fairly long list of stats that you would like to improve. Of course, yours is going to be different from mine and the next person over, because we all have different ideas of who we want to become. But you're going to pick 3 to 5 of these stats that are most relevant to you as you are now, outside of fitness and reading, because I believe those are a must. For example, some of mine are becoming a better storyteller to create compelling scripts and YouTube videos, to take more initiative so that I build my muscle for doing rather than thinking, to build my finances so that I can reinvest into YouTube and other business endeavors. These stats are now giving strict definition to who you want to and will become. You know exactly where your North Star is. And for the next year, increasing these stats towards becoming that person is your sole purpose. The second step is to make time your ally, which will happen over time. To do this, you need to build habits that ideally encompass some of the stats that you're trying to build. For example, I had mentioned earlier that I want to increase my stat to articulate my thoughts, to be well spoken. A habit that will encompass that is reading 30 minutes a day or journaling for 30 minutes a day. Don't mind the new studio setup. I just moved into a new place and I'm filming the rest of this video here. I'll leave a link to actually building the studio somewhere on the screen, check it out. But back to what really matters, reinventing yourself. As you become more consistent with these habits and at some point internalize them, meaning that they become second nature, you'll start doing them without even thinking. You will be always passively increasing the relative stats. And on top of that, you're going to be taking advantage of the compound effect, because the longer you do or build upon these habits, the more your growth is going to continue to multiply. This is how you'll build momentum in your life. And in my experience, I've started to actually feel that momentum 2 to 3 weeks in of doing a specific habit, and it feels fucking awesome. So imagine how it'll feel in 2 to 6 months or even a year. Also, you need to start waking up early, or at least at a time that makes you feel as if there's too much time in the day relative to your schedule. If you work a 9 to 5, I've found that a good sweet spot for that is waking up around 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Waking up early is going to open up your day and keep you away from feeling constrained by the lesser amount of hours you have because you decided to wake up 30 minutes before work instead. This is where the second mindset shift has to happen. Instead of thinking of your day as, well, day and night, you're going to start thinking of your day as 24 hours. And of those 24 hours, as long as you get 6 to 8 hours of consistent and good sleep, you will be able to completely function for the other 16 to 18. You've now erased the idea of waking up early and going to sleep late. It doesn't matter if you're a morning person or a night owl. You simply designated your sleep, those 6 to 8 hours, to an optimal time slot within your 24 hours. And that's all you need. In the very same way, you can apply this concept to your week. Instead of thinking of your week as weekdays and weekends, work days and time off, you will now simply think of your week as the only 7 days you get within that week. And because of that, you are going to optimize your weekly schedule based on which activities are most effective when. A good example of this is my own schedule. My week is from Wednesday to Wednesday, which is also my YouTube upload schedule. And that's because I found that the best days to create the highest quality YouTube videos that I can are on the weekends. And now that might make it seem like I work 7 days out of the week, which I personally kind of try to do. It just means that my lighter days or the opportunities that I give myself to rest are around Wednesdays instead. Another good time-oriented mindset to have is to think of your day in quarters. Depending on how you split your day up, you can also think of them as separate quarters. Just because you messed up or didn't perform the best in one quarter doesn't mean you've messed up the momentum for the other 3 quarters. You don't need to beat yourself up or feel down about it because you've put in the effort to uphold your commitments. You will simply come back to it the next day, absolutely kill it, and continue to build. Having this mentality will help you stay away from building negative momentum by writing off the rest of your day or taking credit away from your work ethic because just for a little bit you happen to be unable to execute. It'll also prevent you from creating a dependence on any specific point in your day that could affect the rest of your day. You will now be able to work and execute at any given moment independent of circumstance. At this point, as you've continued to build momentum through your habits, you've probably already created some systems, some routines relative to your schedule. And naturally, by extension, you've also probably curated your environment a little bit. Now, while I don't think curating your environment is completely necessary, it is extremely helpful, especially if you're just starting out. So you might as well take advantage of it. Curating your environment is going to help you become more consistent, and even more so, it's going to help you improve upon the habits, the systems, and the routines that you've built for yourself. Now, while it is sort of specific to every person, here are a few helpful tips. Have a degree of minimalism. The fact is, you don't need what you don't need. Surprise, simple tends to be the best way of moving about. If you have an unnecessarily cluttered space, it usually tends to get in the way somehow. It can come in the form of disorganizing some aspect of your routine, or maybe even just taking up some real estate in your room where something beneficial to you could have been placed. Those are some of the physical effects, but mentally, if you have a room or a space that really only carries what you need, you're gonna find that your mind is more at peace, or at the very least, you're gonna free up a lot more mental space. Well, at least if you're anything like me. I've found that the more that you can simplify your life in any aspect, the better. I'm actually a huge advocate for building out your workspace, kind of like the studio right behind me. Because I've put in all this effort to create a space, I get that extra boost of feeling much more enthusiastic about completing my task. I always have a personalized place to come back to. And with me, with you, your space will tend to change and grow, making it a very cool representation of who you are and where you're at in life. And as you continue to fall in love with reinventing yourself, you'll find yourself saying no to unproductive or meaningless people / events. And for some reason, a lot of you find that extremely difficult. Either that or I'm just a antisocial psychopath. This is where the third mindset shift has to happen. More often than not, it's not that you don't have the ability to say no. It's not that you can't discipline yourself not to go when you know you shouldn't. It's that you succumb to this feeling of unnecessary guilt or the fear of missing out. This is exactly where you need to reframe. Every time that you have said no is every time that you should feel proud of yourself. Every time that you have said no, you have taken a step towards realizing your potential instead of wasting the time that has been given to you. Every time that you have said no, you have proven to yourself that you are competent, that you are disciplined. Saying no is a sign of self-respect, and you will take absolute pride in that. And to bring everything I've said so far into full circle, you need to become aggressive about increasing your stats, about adhering to the systems and habits that you've created for yourself. You cannot be soft with yourself. How can you continue to improve if every time you slip up or act in a way that takes away from reinventing yourself, you don't hold yourself accountable? You don't truly feel bad about yourself. You don't feel the real need to reassess and realign. You need to become hyper competitive with yourself. You will tap into the aggression, the frustration, the sadness, or whatever it is and turn it into fuel for your growth. Every time you feel any of these emotions, it should be and will be an instant reminder of your decision to entirely reinvent yourself and then motive for taking productive action. For example, at first, you might link the frustration that you have for yourself to doing 10 push-ups, but as you raise your standards higher and higher, as you accomplish more, you might link it to spending an extra hour on your business or your side hustle. A great way to maintain this hyper-competitive nature with yourself is to look at those around you, your peers, your inspirations, and even those that you hate, all of whom are doing much better than you, and then putting a target on their back. You will be constantly reminded of your current inadequacies, but at the same time, you will facilitate the willpower to meet them at their level or surpass them entirely. This is how you will hold yourself accountable for your growth. Because to rise to the levels of those that are above you, of those that are better than you, you need to beat yourself to become the person, the better versions of you that can beat those ahead of you. And do not associate your hyper-competitiveness with negative connotations, with arrogance, with distaste, with insecurity. You will associate it with discipline, with determination, with self-respect. Because it is this part of your nature, this side of you, that will always allow you to recognize in which areas you need to improve, that will hold you accountable when no one else does, and that will keep you stepping up to the challenges that are much further outside of your comfort zone. You now have all the information you need to completely reinvent yourself. Keep in mind, you can definitely customize the time frames. I know that I mentioned a year, but you can work in 4-month cycles, or within a year, every 3 months you have checkpoints. You can also definitely habit stack. Once you've increased one stat sufficiently or internalized a habit, you can add on another, and so forth and so on. But no matter how you've decided to go about it, it is now your mission to realize it, to make it your reality. You have chosen to do so. And as most YouTubers say at the end of every video, subscribe if you haven't already, but this time not simply to subscribe, but to join me on this year-long journey that I'll be taking, and hopefully you will be too. Don't forget, it's time to skyrocket.